In lesson 1 in module 4, we're going to start talking about, well, what percents are and what percents mean. So lesson 1 is just called percent. So let's talk about what percent means, okay? Think of where you've heard cent, maybe in cents, in a dollar, or a century, right? And so if you think how many cents are in a dollar, how many years in a century? Well, basically, this just means per 100. So when we're talking about a percent, we're talking about a part, something, a chunk of something out of 100. Okay. And that's kind of how we normalize it. We always take it out of 100. It could be out of different numbers, but if we can turn it out to 100, then we can compare it to other things. So we're just going to do some matching here. Okay. So it says match the percents with the correct sentence clues. I am half of a half. Okay. I am 5 cubic inches of water in a 20 cubic inch bottle. Okay. So if you think of half, right? And if I'm half of half, if I multiply 2 halves together, I'd get 1 times 1, which is 1, and 2 times 2, which is 4. 1/4. So what percent goes along with 1/4 or a quarter? Quarter, keyword there, right? 25%. Okay. Excuse me. I am less than 1/100th. Less than 1 out of 100. That's really small. So 25 out of 5,000 contestants won a prize. So we're looking at less than 1 out of 100, less than 1%, right? Because 1 out of 100, and if per 100, 1 per 100, 1 part out of 100, we're less than that. So which one of these percents is less than 100? This one right here. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to draw a line up here because we're matching. Okay. All right. Then we have, I am the chance of birthing a boy or a girl. If you're having a baby, is it going to be a boy or a girl? Or if you flip a coin, is it going to be heads or tails? Okay. So kind of what they say is like a 50-50 chance, right? So we're going to take this 50% here and we're going to slide that here. Okay. I am less than a half, but more than a fourth. Less than a half, but more than a fourth. Well, if you say half, okay, I'm less than a half. Well, half, think of it as being like 50%, right? If you got half of the problems right on a test, you got a 50%. More than 1/4. Well, we talked about a fourth is 25%. So we got to be somewhere between 50 and 25%. And so if we look here at what we have left, it's got to be the 30. Okay, I am equal to 1. Okay, 35 out of 35 questions are answered correctly. So if you had a test that was 35, you had 35 questions, you got 35 right, what percent would I write on that? 100%. Okay, and you'll notice that it also tells us that 100% is equal to 1. Okay, remember percent is per 100. So the part out of 100. So if you have 100 over 100, 100 divided by 100 is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. Okay, I am more than 1. Well, we just said 1 was 100%, right? Okay, so more than 100%. Instead of the 1,200 expect to be raised, 3,600 was raised. Okay, well, let's see what we got left. We got a 1%, a 10%, and a 300%. Pretty sure has to be 300. And if you think about it, 3,600 is 3 times 1,200. If you raised 1,200, you would raise 100% of what you need. If you raise 3 times that, 3 times 100 is 300. Tenth of a tenth. 1 penny is part of this dollar. Okay, so you could go 1/10 of a tenth. 1 times 1 is 1, 10 times 10 is 100. Or 1 penny out of how many cents a dollar? 1 out of 100. So this is 1%. Okay, I'm less than a fourth, but more than 100th. Well, I know we only got one left, but still, less than a fourth. Remember we said fourth, okay, is 25%. So less than that, but more than 100th. Well, what's 100th? Right here, 100th, it's 1%. And what we have left is 10%. Okay, so Percent should be something you're familiar with because it is something you deal with. If nothing else, that's what I put on your test scores is percents, okay? But you can go shopping and you can, get 10% off things, okay? So percents are something you're going to deal with a lot, and it's important that we understand them. So let's continue on that mission to understand them. It says color in the grids to represent the following fractions. All right, so if we look here, if you were to count these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 along the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 along the side, 10 by 10. If we multiply it, it would be 100. So we know there's 100 squares here, okay? If it says color in 30 of them, well, color in just 30 out of 100, right? 30 out of 100. Okay, so 1, 2, well, basically, I know if I fill in this whole row, okay, and hopefully you color in better than me with this. If I fill in that whole row, that's 10, right? So if I fill in another row, it might be helpful to use highlighters. A hint, that'd be 20, because I know there's 10 in each row. Okay, so there's 30. Okay, basically I'm coloring in 3 rows of these. Okay, so now let's see that's different. Remember, percent is part of a whole. Okay, so if I'm coloring 30 out of 100, that's 30 hundredths. If we say it correctly, 30 hundredths, I can raise a decimal. 30 hundredths spot. This is in the hundredth spot, right? Tenths, hundredths. And if we think of it as hundredths, part out of whole, scroll all the way up to the top here, right? The part out of 100 per 100, the part I have is 30. 30 per 100 is 30%. Okay, so these are really the 3 representations we're going to be working with. What if I had to, again, 100 squares here. What if I had to fill in 3 of them? Well, that one probably be a little bit easier. Okay, 3 out of 100. So we have 3 out of 100, 3 hundredths. This is going to be different, not 30 hundredths. I still got to put the 3 in the hundred spot. So 3 in the hundredth spot. And, well, 3 per 100. 3%. When I say 3 per 100, I'm actually saying 3%. And I just make the percent sign. Okay. What about 1/3 of 100? Well, this right here, if I filled that in, that would be 1. 1 out of 100. If I filled this in, it'd be 2 out of 100. 3 of them is 3 out of 100. So if I only want 1/3 of it, I got to break this square into thirds. And if I fill in this one right here, that's 1/3 out of 100. Okay, so 1/3 of 100. Well, this can be a little tricky. Okay, I want you to think, I'll kind of put this all together, that 1/100th is 0.01, right? If I took 1 box out of it. So if I want 1/3 of that, okay, honestly, you could just type this into a calculator, okay? But if I want 1/3 of that, 1/3 of this 1 ends up being 0.003 repeating, okay? Because 1 divided by 3, 1/3 is 0.3 repeating. And notice it's not in the hundred spot, it's in the thousand spot. So if you want to write this as a percent, the easiest way is just to say 1/3 percent. But you could also write this as 0.3 repeating percent. Okay. So now, nope, I think we're going to pause there. Okay. So basically what we're doing today is we're kind of getting comfortable with that word percent. We should, we should be familiar with it. We deal with it more than maybe some other things we do in math. But we're going to start going through the 3 different types of ways we can write it. We can write numbers as a percent, as a fraction, or as a decimal. And it's important that we can go back and forth between them so we can perform some operations on them.